The Dirty Cats of Boggle Hole. Chapter 3. Lost in the Dark. Emma kept a very tight grip of Nick's hand. She was terrified. The water swept them away and out to sea, or at least that's what it felt like, before she could even realise what had happened. Nick managed to swing himself round to face Emma, and he grabbed her other arm. "Hang on tight, Em, and don't let go," he cried. Emma had no chance to reply, and she was hanging on tight for dear life and had no intention of letting go. The next thing that she knew was they'd been washed up in a tiny little beach in one of the gullies in the cliffs. The water was still washing right around them, and they both fully expected to be sucked back into the sea again at any moment. As Emma was facing inland, the cliff face seemed to open in front of her, and a black shape came out towards them. Suddenly, it had grabbed both of them and pulled them roughly right inside the cliff face into a dark cave. It was pitch black. Emma and Nick lay on the floor of the cave, momentarily stunned by the last few moments. It had seemed like an age that they were in the water, but it was in fact only a couple of minutes. Neither of them had the energy or the inclination to speak. They still clung on to each other's hands in the certain knowledge that they were, at the very least, not alone in this darkness. "Hello. I only just got to you two in time, didn't I?" There was something very strange about this voice, yet it was very familiar. There was a kind of homeliness and security in the tone that made them both feel a little more relaxed. However, they still couldn't see anything in the blackness. It was perhaps because of this that neither of them could tell where the voice was coming from. Yes, I think you did. In fact, I'm glad that you did, and thank you," Nick added. "But who are you? And where are you? I can't see a thing." Nick was still shivering, but his protective instincts and curiosity had begun to take over. "I think you know who I am," replied the voice. It seemed to come from all around them. "It's very difficult to see, and I can't tell where your voice is coming from," said Nick, puzzled. "Never mind," said the voice. "We must get away from here quickly, before anyone comes. We shouldn't be here." "Where are we?" Emma asked quietly. "Boggle Hole," replied the voice. "Yes, we know that," Nick added quickly. "But whereabouts in Boggle Hole?" "No," said the voice patiently. "You don't understand. We are in the Boggle Hole." The tone and the emphasis on the Boggle Hole had seemed to tell them that this might not be a good place to be. The pitch black all around them certainly confirmed Emma's opinion of this place. Still grasping Nick's hands, she looked around in the vague hope that she might see some light. There wasn't any. Nick sensed the movement. "Are you okay, Em?" he asked softly. "Yes, of course," she replied. "So what is the Boggle Hole, then?" Nick asked the question that Emma wasn't sure if she really wanted to know the answer to. "Well," explained the voice, "it all started a long time ago." The voice tailed off and was absolutely quiet. "What is it?" Nick asked anxiously, sensing something was wrong. "Shh, quiet," said the voice. "We're not alone." It was bad enough that it was dark and that they were not sure where they were. It was also bad enough that they knew that Joe was outside alone and they had no idea where Tim was. But to discover that they were not alone in this darkness was much worse. The tone of the voice was a clear indication that they should do something quickly. But what? "Can you hear that?" asked the voice. They listened, and sure enough, they could hear distinct voices echoing towards them and the sound of footsteps on the stone floor of a tunnel somewhere. The sounds were ominous. "Yes, what is it?" Without answering, the voice put what felt like a paw gently on Nick's shoulder and guided him forward. "Quick, this way, Nick, and hold Emma's hand tight." Until then, neither of them had realised that the voice knew both of their names. They edged their way to a passage at the side of the cave. It was difficult to move fast, as they could see absolutely nothing. However, they moved as quickly as they could, as the voices and footsteps seemed to be getting closer. It was difficult to estimate the size of the tunnel that they were now in, although Nick guessed that it might be about 5 or 6 feet across and about 6 feet high from the sound of Emma's voice. It was then that he realised something peculiar. The voice of their rescuer didn't have the same echo as he and Emma's voices had. In fact, it didn't have any echo at all. It almost seemed as if it were inside his head, like he was hearing it through headphones. "Quick, through here," the voice urged them. It stopped and guided them towards one side of the passage. Nick felt himself pressed up against a large wooden door. Instinctively, he tried the handle, and the door opened. He edged in carefully, with his hand in front of his face to protect himself against the unknown. Emma followed, holding his hand and moving cautiously. The voice placed a gentle paw on her shoulder and guided her in. She knew that touch. There was a certain gentleness about it. She was just about to say something when the voice followed them through the door and closed it quietly. "Shh, now," the voice whispered. "We must be absolutely quiet. They're nearly here." "Who?" began Emma. "Please be quiet," the voice urged. As they listened, in the dark stillness beyond the door, they could hear the sound of the voices getting louder. They stood quietly against the stone walls and waited. In a few minutes, the voice came along the very passage they were in a few moments ago. They were relieved to be behind this door. They could hear parts of the conversation as the strange voices passed outside the door.
Not everyone is as skilled as me, so you see I might stand a chance. You? Never in a million years. You're half as dirty as me, and I will have to see what happens. There's only one real competitor for Biggles, and that's Big Tig.
Emma was listening carefully. Competition, she thought. And they seemed to know Biggles, who had also talked about being dirty. What strange talk. Emma, being as curious as ever, wanted to find out more. There was a sudden silence, and then one shouted out,
"Lantha!"
The voices seemed to disappear very quickly and sounded very alarmed. "What's Orlantha?" Nick asked the voice. "You don't want to know. Believe me," said the voice. "We must be quieter than ever and very, very still." In the next few moments, the atmosphere changed completely, from one of nervous uncertainty to absolute terror. It seemed that the darkness around them had become blacker than ever, and the air had become very chilled. They couldn't see or even hear what was approaching along the passageway the other side of the door, but they were absolutely certain that something was coming from the sense of the dread that filled the air. Something very dark and sinister was now on the other side of the door. Everything was motionless, as if time had stopped to allow the passing of this creature. Emma could feel her heart beating, and she was sure that whatever it was would be able to hear it too. They couldn't see it, but they felt the creature stop outside the door. It seemed as if it was sniffing the air to find its prey. Nick had the urge to burst out the door and confront whatever creature this might be, and be done with it. Of course, his common sense got the better of him, and he stayed where he was. There was a distant echoing crash from somewhere along the passage. At once, the atmosphere broke, and the creature moved away as quickly as it had arrived. Like a foul wind, the creature had been blown away. "That was the door," the voice said. "Wait here and do not move until I come back. That may be Tim and Joe at the door. If it is, they're in big trouble and I need to get to them fast." Without a chance for either of them to ask what the voice meant by this, it had opened and closed the door and gone into the darkness. The soft thud of the door closing had told them that they were once again alone in the dark.